Well, I think that this is review number 300 on this channel. And that's not including a handful of reviews that I've delisted and redone. So I thought that for review number 300, I wanted to pick one of my favorite movies. So for this review, we're going to take a look at The Stranger from 1946, which is a film noir masterpiece, directed and co-written by Orson Welles, and also starring Edward G. Robinson, Loretta Young, and Orson Welles himself. I love this film. I've seen it many times through the years. I think the first time I caught it was, back in like the 1990s when I was still working at Family Video. And I've watched it a bunch of times since then. Love coming back to this film again. And I thought this would be great for a review for number 300. And thanks everybody for watching the channel and for all the comments and suggestions, good and bad. It's all great. I read them all and I try to improve. I try to do better in my own fashion. And it's been a fun experience and I hope to keep the reviews coming. So stay tuned. Anyhow, here's a summary of The Stranger, spoiler free. And then I'll offer some closing thoughts and some trivia and interesting things that I learned about the film. Now, the film opens up, and we are basically around post-World War II, and we see Edward G. Robinson as a character of Mr. Wilson. Now, he's with the Allied War Crimes Commission, and he wants to track down and capture Nazi war criminal Franz Kindler. He believes that the way to do this is by releasing his fellow prisoner of war, Konrad Meinecke, played by actor Konstantin Shane, thinking that they can follow him and he might lead them to his old boss. Now, the film then takes a frantic turn into shadowy noir, and I really love the direction and the film work here. Visually, reminds me a lot of John Alton-style cinematography that I've been reviewing a lot on this channel lately. But boy, does it feel like we are just thrown right into the action. Now, I think a part of this is because a good portion of the early part of this film was apparently edited from the movie. Now, more on that in the closing thoughts. But anyhow, we see Meinecke. He arrives, and he is pursued by some shadowy agents, one of whose face we don't even see. So Mr. Wilson, he's contacted by these agents. He is notified that Meinecke has arrived, so he is after this guy. He wants to find out where he's going and who is he off to see. Meinecke, meanwhile, gets in contact with another one of his agents, and he gets a lead to Connecticut. So we cut to Connecticut, and, I can't place it about this, but something about this scene is just so reminiscent of Hitchcock. It's deceptively bright. You have the chipper music, and it's just this peaceful small-town setting. I see something like this in a film, and I know, no, not going to fall for it. I'm not letting my guard down. This place might look happy and peaceful, but I bet something sinister is going to happen behind the scenes. So Mr. Wilson arrives in town, and he stops at this quaint little small shop, and there it's run by jolly old Mr. Potter, played by actor Billy House, who is just fantastic in this film. He's this bright, colorful character playing the shopkeeper. He's just sitting there laughing away at the radio, and he welcomes Mr. Wilson to town. Around this time, Meinecke arrives and leaves a bag with Mr. Potter. Wilson sees this, and he's suspicious of this character and pursues him. And it's some beautiful filmmaking as the two of them just kind of make their way through the center of the small town. Now, Meinecke sneaks into the back of a school with Wilson in pursuit. Now, Wilson enters into a gymnasium. He's looking around, and Meinecke from above gets the drop on him, and ouch! So Meinecke is looking for his old boss, so he makes his way to Rankin's home, where he meets with Mary Longstreet, played here by lovely actress Loretta Young, and he learns that she will be getting married to Rankin that very evening. Now he asks if he can wait there, and she seems a little reluctant, but agrees. But when he figures out where he will be coming from, he actually goes out to meet with him on the way. Now he's going to meet with Rankin, or Franz Kindler, as he was previously known during the war. So Rankin/Kindler is played here by Orson Welles. Now he's currently serving as a professor at a boys' school in town. So they meet, and Rankin seems a little bit shocked to see his old friend and tells him maybe they should go meet in the woods privately to talk. And his students, meanwhile, run off on a paper chase while he's talking. Well, Rankin talks with his old friend, seems happy to see him, and talks about how he has found the perfect cover here in town as this teacher, undetected, while waiting for the Reich to rise again. Now, Meineke, however, tells Rankin that he's a different man now, that he has found God and his life has been transformed. But he also drops that he thinks he was followed by a man that was smoking a pipe. Well, Rankin puts it together that this might blow his cover, and while Meineke is about to pray with him, Rankin reaches out and strangles him. So he does a hasty burial. He's nervous because his students are nearby, and then he gathers up the papers that they were using for the paper chase and leads them away from the body. And then suddenly the film cuts and he's getting married to Mary. Wow. Well, meanwhile, Mr. Wilson, he kind of wakes up and is rubbing the back of his head, and he gets back to Mr. Potter's shop to get some aspirin. And he sits for a game of checkers with him, and he uses this as an opportunity to ask some questions. He's just casually trying to blend in as just a visitor. Wilson uses the cover of an antique dealer. He finds out that, yes, indeed, there was another stranger in town, one who apparently arrived on the same bus that he did. Rankin, meanwhile, has left his own wedding reception to go out and properly bury the body of Meineke. And then he returns back home, changes his outfit, and tells Mary that they can leave for their honeymoon. Mr. Wilson, meanwhile, goes through the list of recent arrivals in town. He's trying to figure out who he might be after here. He heads to the clock tower in town, and he sees someone working on it, and he meets with the character of Noah, played by actor Richard Long, who seems like a friendly sort of fellow. He also speaks with Judge Longstreet, played by Philip Merivale, and this is around the time that Rankin and Mary return home from their honeymoon. They all have dinner together, and Wilson maintains his cover of antique dealer. While they eat together, the topic turns to Germans and the war, and the professor goes on what seems like an attack of the character of the German people. Perhaps he's trying to put aside some suspicion. Now later, Rankin takes Red, the dog, out for walksies, but the dog seems preoccupied with the smell of something dead, namely Meineke, and starts digging in the ground. Now Rankin is, of course, upset about this and chases the poor dog around to get it to stop. Well, Rankin returns home and talks with Mary, who tells him about her dream of the strange little man who had visited town. Now Rankin just sort of stands there, eerily in the shadows, listening. His character is growing more and more menacing as the film goes on. It's really great. Now he has locked away Red in the cellar, and you hear the poor puppy whining, which Mary is not happy about, but he insists. The meanie. Well, the next day, Mr. Wilson goes fishing with Noah. It's actually a really beautiful scene, the calm water and the stone walls around them. I really just love this setting as the two of them are just in this boat talking together. Wilson here realizes that he can trust Noah and opens up to him, tells him that he's actually an investigator, and he wants to know more about Rankin. So Noah starts to talk to him a little more openly about this character. Wilson then stops at the cafe for some checkers with Mr. Potter. And Wilson just sort of stares off at the clock tower, just lost in thought. They talk about the suitcase that was left behind by Meineke. I really love this scene, by the way, as Wilson is looking off into space, but he names everything that he thinks is in the case without even looking at it, as Mr. Potter just unpacks one piece after another. And Mr. Potter's oblivious to what's going on as he takes the inventory. It's just a great scene. So the professor and Mary stop in, and we see the professor starts acting funny whenever there's any talk about the mysterious stranger in town. Wilson notices this as well. Rankin seems anxious and overprotective, And Wilson just kind of sits there quietly puffing on his pipe, almost like a Sherlock Holmes. Now later, Wilson confides to Noah privately that Mary might know who this stranger is and that she's covering for him. Noah, he's kind of innocent and kind of remains defensive of her, as she is his sister. Now back at Rankin's place, he tells Mary this elaborate fiction about how in the past he was responsible for the accidental death of a girl and how he was being blackmailed by that mysterious stranger who had arrived in town. She goes along with it and just believes him completely, even though it seems like a really fishy story to we the viewer. But she loves the guy and just believes everything he says, and he tells her that he wants to go off and work on the clock alone for a while. Now the next day, Noah discovers poor Red, his puppy friend, who had died somehow. They bring him to the doctor in town, who determines the dog was poisoned. It's more of Wells' fantastic film work here. As we see them meet with the doctor, you can hear them talk behind the window with the audio sounding, slightly muted, like we're listening in from outside. And then the camera follows them in an unbroken shot as they leave the doctor's office. We also see the deep focus as we see them watching. Here, just watch the scene. This is awesome.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mr. Peabody, would you please get that magazine rack in and hurry up about it?
Yes, Mr. Potter.
Hurry up about it. Move along and... afternoon, Mr. Wilson. Afternoon, Noah. Bring him right in there, will you please? Please, right in.
What does the law say about this kind of murder? Is it the same as killing a man? It ought to be. It's just as bad.
Forepaw's muddy. No mud on hind. Dry leaves mixed with the mud. Red must have been digging somewhere in the woods.
Have you any idea what for, Mr. Wilson?
The body, I think. Minor case.
The little man. Then...
So Rankin stops in at the shop to get some machine oil for the clock. And it's here that he finds out from some of the talk there that there's a manhunt for the body of the stranger. Now Rankin is alarmed and he leaves in a hurry. Now at home he starts packing up his suitcase and he tells Mary that he needs to get out of town. He confesses to killing Red because he was digging at the grave of the stranger that he had killed. But again, Mary stays loyal to this creepy guy, and she wants to run off with him as well. Now, in the woods, the townspeople have found the dead body of Meineke, so things are moving along here, it would seem. Mary's father wants to see her, and while she seems nervous and anxious about it, Rankin insists that she goes. Now, it's here that she meets with both her father and also Mr. Wilson, where he elaborates on who Rankin actually is and his involvement in the Second World War and in the prison camps. And they actually go so far as to show film footage from the war, which is sort of a unique thing in a film like this. Mary watches all of it, seems really shocked to think that her husband could be involved in this, but she's still not convinced. She keeps defending him, says they're making a mistake, and she runs off. Well, Wilson tells the judge that he suspects Rankin might try to kill her. Mary, meanwhile, runs off to see Rankin. He's up working on the clock, and she pledges her loyalty to him. But boy, he looks really suspicious at this point, like he doesn't trust anyone and he just wants to get out of town. Now, the townspeople have all gathered, not to get Rankin like you might think, but instead to celebrate because he has apparently gotten the big clock tower to work again. In fact, there's a gathering at Rankin's house to celebrate the fact that he's repaired the clock. Mary keeps up the brave face, But after everyone leaves, you can see her that she's just starting to fall apart. This is starting to get to her, and she just can't take it anymore. Well, Mr. Wilson gets a report from the maid Sarah, actress Martha Wentworth. By the way, she did a number of voice roles in other films, like The Sword and the Stone. She was the voice of Madame Mim. Remember that one? It's pretty cool. Anyhow, sorry. She reports that Mary is starting to seem like she's on the verge of collapsing, so they really need to watch her closely, that she doesn't leave or go anywhere that might lead to her accidental death. So Rankin calls Mary and tells her to come to the clock tower to see him. Uh-oh. And don't let anybody know about it. In the meanwhile, he stops by to play some checkers, presumably to maintain an alibi at the local shop. So Mary is about to leave, but Sarah, not so subtly, wants to know where she is going and gives a big dramatic act. Oh, please don't leave. You don't love me and all that stuff. And then finally just clutches her heart as if having a heart attack. Oh, don't leave me. Well, Mary is a little flustered. She really wants to go. But since she needs to stay with her, she instead calls for Noah because since she can't go, she asks him to go instead to the clock tower. Uh-oh. So Noah contacts Mr. Wilson, and they both head together to the clock tower, and they climb this extremely rickety-looking ladder up to the top to see Rankin. Wilson is climbing, the music and the tension builds, and oh no, he hits a sabotaged plank of the ladder. Well, with only a few minutes left of the film, I'm going to leave you hanging. Well, you can see for yourself how things end. Will Mr. Wilson survive? Will Rankin get away? Will Mary stick with this criminal? Well, you need to see for yourself. And hey, it's in the public domain, so it's an easy film to find for free. So go out and check this one out to see the exciting ending for yourself. But let me offer some closing thoughts here. The Stranger was released in 1946, and it was produced by Sam Spiegel, who at that time was billed as S.P. Eagle, and the film was the last International Pictures production distributed by RKO. And as mentioned, films in the public domain, there are many copies online. I have a good one linked below. The cinematography for this film is fantastic, and it was done by Russell Meddy. He would work again with Welles on the film Touch of Evil in 1958. The musical score was by Bronislaw Kaper. The background about the film is that Sam Spiegel was impressed with Welles' work on Citizen Kane and approached him with a script written by Anthony Vaylor and an uncredited part by John Huston. Well, Welles accepted, and he offered to direct. Spiegel agreed to this on the condition that Welles would not alter the script once production had begun, and that he would pay out of pocket if the production went over budget. Well, Welles accepted and contributed to some of the script rewriting, claiming that he wrote all of the stuff in the drugstore as well as the first 2 or 3 reels of the picture, which were almost entirely cut. More on that in just a minute. Welles also took credit for inventing Billy House's checker-playing character, who, again, I thought was a very colorful addition to the film. And as promised, Welles brought the picture in on time and on budget. Spiegel had initially planned to hire John Huston to direct the movie, but when Huston entered the military, Welles was given his chance to direct the film and again prove he could keep it under budget. And this film was actually Welles' first job as a film director in 4 years. Here are my thoughts on the film. As mentioned at the beginning, this is a movie I just love. I've seen it many times over the years. And while it's not Citizen Kane, which was Welles' more better-known masterpiece, there's just so much to this particular film that I love, namely the look and feel of the film and the idea of a sinister war criminal who's just trying to hide out in a quaint small town in the investigation that's trying to dig him out. Orson Welles paints such a beautiful picture of this small Connecticut town with colorful locals. All the while, there's a manhunt going on. The movie has noir elements, the shadowy sequence, while at the same time the film also features plenty of bright outdoor shots and small town charm. I think it's also got elements of, I guess, what you could call fish out of water, with Edward G. Robinson's character as this manhunter from the city who is just trying to discreetly fit into this small town to do his investigation without blowing his cover. You know, joining in to play checkers with a local shopkeeper or fishing with one of the students. He's just really great here as this driven investigator who frequently we see is just sitting there, puffing on his pipe, studying the clock and contemplating. You know, watching this, I did think that there were shades of his character from Double Indemnity as well. Also noteworthy was his friendship with the character Noah, actor Richard Long, who he realizes someone that he can trust and confide in. And Noah, meanwhile, just seems to have that genuine, good-natured innocence to him, really perplexed that something like this could be going on in his own town with his own family. I really like their friendship. Their scenes together really helped unravel the mystery as they're working together. Orson Welles was also fantastic in the film. I really liked how Welles was depicted here in the film, initially, as this affable, likable professor, and his students all admire him, and he seems to have his cover all together. You know, this hideout of his in this small town. But then once that Meineke character shows up, the cover is blown, and it's all downhill. And as the film progresses, you see the transformation of his character. He starts to look more paranoid, sweaty, and in addition, he just looks more kind of sickish. The biography Citizen Welles by Frank Brady describes that at the time, Welles was on this severe diet during the shooting. And I think he wasn't eating much. He was just getting like injections or something. And I think that adds a great deal to his kind of emaciated look here. And honestly, it's a considerably different look than his later years as his weight started to build. And of course, Loretta Young was beautiful and charming here. There was a sweetness to her character and how she just trusts in this guy, even if it did seem to go a little too far. You know, oh, you're a war criminal? Oh, it's okay, I still love you. You know, I think the idea is that maybe audiences in 1946 were still kind of adjusting to post-war conditions, and they didn't fully comprehend the horrors that had taken place during the Second World War. And she was depicted here in a way maybe as the awakening of Americans to the dark events that had taken place in the prison camps and so on, almost unable to fully accept or comprehend what had taken place, until finally it all starts to become clear to her. As for the look of the film, I think it's just fantastic. It features those Orson Welles elements you see in a lot of his films, the shadowy settings, the moody lighting, occasionally weird angles, and some of those depth of focus shots, which is where you can see things close up, kind of mid-range, and far away. It's such a neat effect. It's something you maybe don't really notice or think about unless it's pointed out, but I love when you can spot it in his films. Now, apparently, Welles wanted Agnes Moorehead, from Bewitched, to portray the investigator. He said, I thought it would be much more interesting to have a spinster lady on the heels of this Nazi, he said. But Edward G. Robinson was cast instead. But it's one of those interesting things. It's wild to think about, Agnes Moorehead. Huh. Now, according to the biography Citizen Welles, there were 2 reels of film from the beginning that covered a larger part of the narrative taking place in South America. And these were all cut from the film, and this really bothers me because it has me wondering, if we're talking about 2 reels of 35 millimeter film, I think that would have been around roughly a half hour of film, right? You see, I watched this film, and you got the beginning of the film. There's the shadowy segment of Meineke. He's traveling, he's getting to the country, and it just seems to cry out to me for more detail. What is going on? I mean, he's being pursued by this lovely Spanish actress that sort of looks like Sade, and I just want to know, who are these people? What's going on? Why are they following him? You see these spies have a brief exchange with one another in Spanish. There's so much mystery to it, and I would just love to see some of this lost footage. But apparently, these 35 millimeter reels were all lost. The negatives have gone missing, so we may never really know. I wonder if these may surface again someday. Anyhow, I've rambled enough. That was my 300th review, with hopefully plenty more films in the future. The Stranger was a 1946 noir masterpiece, and it's one of my favorite films. Orson Welles, Loretta Young, and Edward G. Robinson are all just amazing here. The film is beautiful to watch. The story is exciting. It's really just a great film. It's in the public domain, and it's definitely one worth checking out.